AndyJM Main, you really wanted to do well today. You brought a whole lot of heat into this very cold race. Tell me about your race today, because it was a tough one out there for you.
Yeah, it sure was. Wells was just gunning it from the start. He wanted to have the gap early on, and riding from the front really helped. Just because of all the spray coming up of riders' wheels. I had a bunch of mud stuck in my eyes from just following guys around, so that made it pretty tough.
I saw you start with your glasses on and end with them off. Tell me about that. Visually, you are not the strongest guy out there. Tell me about that.
Well, I've got contacts in, so I can see just fine, but I had the glasses on to start because I knew the start was going to be mayhem. There'd be just slop flying everywhere. I kept them on as long as I could. Finally, I chucked them because I just couldn't see through them anymore, and it was after the field had split up a bunch, so it really wasn't a big deal after that.
I saw it in the sand where Todd was just nailing it in that sand and coming off that lip and jumping into it and really just not really opening it up right away, but he sort of slowly just gained speed on you. Tell me about how hard it was to stay with Todd Wells in that sandy section.
The sand wasn't the hard part, actually. It was more the hill. On the sand, I could run just as fast as he was riding. The transition from me jumping back on gave him a slight gap, but I could close the gap pretty easily. And the hill was the hardest part, just drilling it over and over and over again. There were probably 4 different punches going up the hill.
It looked like with about 5 laps to go, he got you into a trouble spot, like about a 10 bike length gap, and he just kept the heat on. Tell me about that from both ends of that, being on the receiving end and on the giving end of that, because you've been on both sides of that equation. How important is that to just sort of nail somebody psychologically and leave them there like that, and just pin them up against the wall, and just how painful is it to be on the receiving end of Todd Wells like that?
Well, I've been on the receiving end of Todd Wells like that for the last couple of years, so I'm just stoked that I can hold his wheel for as long as I could. On the giving end of it, really you're just running scared. You're hoping that this is the chance that they're just not going to have it. And I was holding pretty steady. I was hoping that just me being there was going to kind of give him some disincentive to keep jamming. Maybe he'd ease up. If he bobbled once, I'm going to be right back on him. So I was riding well. I just wasn't on his wheel.
In good weather at Northampton, a rider going off the front, that happened a lot. Riders would, they'd accidentally have mistakes. They'd have little problems going off the front. Everybody took a turn off the front in Northampton. But in bad weather, mistakes in the back are amplified. Tell me about just the game of mistakes in cross.
It's just a matter of getting your mud legs. You practice on the first few warm-up laps, and hopefully by the time the race starts, you really get a good feel for the mud. Then you just try to be as smooth and as conservative as possible. Conservative when you're drifting both your wheels, but you just don't want to crash. And so sometimes you take a corner a little bit slower than usual, but you need to do the same thing every lap consistently from lap to lap to lap, and that's the way you really drill it into opponents. They make a mistake, you gain 15 seconds. You don't make any mistakes, they don't gain it back.
Tell me about just NorCal heritage. You growing up here, your brother, of course, is a great cross racer. You guys are local heroes here. But just in terms of NorCal and cross, how important is it? It's almost like New England where you're not really a bike racer if you don't race cross in this section. And tell me about what that does for riders coming up in this region.
It's just, I don't know, the quality of riders and the level that it's brought up to is just phenomenal. Having nationals here the last 2 out of the last 5 years is really huge because the crowds are just super into it. I get a home crowd advantage. I mean, I live 20 minutes from here, and it's awesome. I drive by this venue whenever I'm driving up to the city or wherever, and I'm just like, yeah, that's where that cross race was. It's really neat. And then, I mean, I started racing cross in Santa Cruz, the Surf City series, and really they really have it dialed. And the first cross race I came to, Tomas Frischneck was there. I was like, oh yeah, this is for real, this is serious. And I was getting creamed, and I just steadily built it up, and now I'm at a high level like I am today. But I started out just like everybody else. I think that Bees riders who are doing races now see that, and they're like, oh, I can do that same thing. Look, this guy, you go back and look at my results 5 years ago, I was getting lapped twice. So
Now, I don't interview you a lot during the middle of the season, when we're on the road circuit, because you're an up-and-coming road rider for the Sierra Nevada Cliff Bar team. But, when I look at what Cross does for a lot of riders, that whether you're a sponsor looking for notoriety, a product that's looking for notoriety, or a racer looking to break into some magazine coverage and giving a sponsor a reason to pay attention to you, Cross really pays off in terms of what we call the signal to noise ratio. What has this done for Cliff Bar as a company and as a sponsor for this team, as also for AndyJM? You really have managed to break through into the pages of Velo News and other magazines, as well as onto TV, by doing Cross. Could riders benefit by just the business savvy of getting their name out there through Racing Cross?
The exposure is pretty awesome. The fact that OLN's doing coverage speaks volumes to, the where Cross is at. And, I've been lucky to be able to get in the good pictures and I've got a bright red kit, so you can always pick me out even if I'm in the background. So, I'm always really, really excited to see a picture of me or just a mention of me or a quote that I give or something like that in a magazine or anything. And I feel really lucky that, people start paying attention to me or that they think I'm doing something newsworthy. I'm just doing my thing. I love racing cross. I love muddy conditions like this, and it's just half the people are just like, oh no, I want to stay home. And I'm just like, yeah, bring on the cross. Yeah.
Tell me about, just in terms of you've got a lot of guys who are out there. I watch these guys who are 22, 23, 24, trying to make it on the pro road circuit and just getting the stuffing knocked out of them. And you're right, a lot of them do want to quit in August and September, and you're like just coming on. In terms of like recommending this to younger riders to really consider doing something like Cross, it's worked for Tim Johnson, it's worked for guys like Walker Ferguson. What does it mean in terms of just for developing a career if you're coaching somebody?
It definitely gets you noticed. Definitely. And it's a whole nother season worth of exposure to get. I think I did 60 something racing days on the road this year, and I'm going to do 20 racing days in cross. And I don't know, it's just an extra third of the season, and it just adds on that many more chances for exposure, if nothing else. Plus, I just seem to be good at it, so I'm getting extra exposure just from my placings.
People are calling the Cliff Bar team like the Dallas Cowboys of cross, or whatever you want to liken it to, the New York Yankees of cross. For this team, this has been a breakout year. The women were always really solid, and the Masters were pretty good just by right of being the best NorCal guys. But you and Jackson in particular really sort of etched the glass and sort of came through this year. What changed differently? What culturally about this team makes you a winner? That there's a lot of riders that maybe going into cross season are just as fit, but you have broken through this year. What's the difference, and what's the heritage of this Cliff Bar team?
Well, in terms of just our success this year, cross just hurts a ton, and it just takes a certain mental willpower to really just drive it that last little bit. You could take two guys who are the same strength. One guy knows he can win. One guy isn't quite so sure. The guy who knows he's going to win is going to win every single time. And I've been close a lot. I've had a couple seconds. I've had a couple thirds. Getting a win 2 weeks ago was just huge. I know I can do it now. And I've got tons more confidence to not let Todd Wells or Mark Gullickson or Johnny Page go off the front, because I know if I hold them in and I'm with them and I just drill myself in the ground to hold it there, I'll have a shot.
A lot of football coaches and coaches in other sports say to their athletes, expect to win going into it. You didn't expect to win until this year. Tell me about the change of attitude and that attitude that you bring to the front line. You guys go off the start a lot faster than I've ever seen AndyJM or Jackson Stewart go off the front row. You seem to go at it with a craziness. And tell me about that attitude of expecting to win.
I don't expect to win. I just try to do my best each time. I look at the course and how my legs are going that day, and I say, I'm going to do well, or oh no, I'm in trouble. And I've only had one bad race this whole season so far. Knock on wood. I'm looking for really good nationals. I'm planning on doing well. Won't say I'm expecting to win, because that's total jinx. But I'm feeling good.
All right. Good luck in nationals. I'll see you out there. All right.